This is the fourth talk I'm giving on Uji. So yesterday was the third, and I did a couple months ago. I continue where I left off, and also to take a moment here to reflect. We're sitting Nirvana Sesshin, and the Nirvana Sesshin is a commemoration of the death of the Buddha. And it's also a time for us to reflect on death. And there's just so many ways that inserts itself into our life these days. For the Nebraska Zen Center Sangha, we've recently lost Noning, and then shortly after that, Kyoki. And then we've had deaths of family members, parents. I've experienced the death of my father within the last 2 years, and then more recently a friend. And the thing that I'm reflecting on personally with regards to death is, if we're not there for it, we will miss it. I mistakenly assumed that I would see Nonin again when I left Nebraska Zen Center in, I think it was June of 2022, from something that we were doing here. I went to drive home, and I got a call from Kyoki saying, "Are you going to come see us?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go see you next month. I'm making a plan to see you next month." Well, next month came, and he was in the process of dying. And I left in the morning to get here, and he had died a couple hours before I arrived to see him. So I missed it. And I thought, what's going on? I'm not picking up on the cues. And then Kyoki's passing. She was, I saw her the day before she died, and then that evening I got a call around, it was like 2 a.m. from her son saying, "You better come if you want to see her." And I got there, she already passed away. I missed it. I missed the opportunity to be there at that moment again. And then my father's passing too. I was planning to be there 2 weeks before 2 weeks after he died. I mean, it's a bigger deal to get to Maryland to see him at where I was. I just got to cross my fingers and hopes he makes it. Well, didn't make it. And then more recently, a friend that I hadn't been in touch with for 30 years that I used to swim with in college. We used to swim in the same lane, the breaststrokers, and so there was an intimacy there. And I hadn't been in touch with him for 30 years, and I thought, And I tried to get in touch with him a few months ago, just out of the blue. Well, how's he doing? I wonder how he's doing. I know he has an illness that he's been struggling with. And poof, gone. And that instigated in me the desire to reach out to other people that I was friends with in college and all. And just as I'm reflecting on this, Nirvana, the Nirvana of the Buddha, it's really a time to get closer to death. And as far as Zen teachings goes, the importance of life and death. Life and death is of supreme importance. And if we can be there for somebody the moments before they die or as they're dying, that's where there's no regret whatsoever. We're there. Well, I say that, and then there's probably some regret still. We can't help. But there is this sadness, right, that accompanies the dying process when we witness it in others, and there's things we wish we said, there's actions we wish we had taken. I wish I had been there. Well, yeah, I can't do anything about it now. But still, I recognize, yeah, even if I had been there, maybe there would be regret. But still, there is that regret, and there's sadness. And for me, Nirvana is also equivalent with the development of compassion. Because if we're really with the dying experience of others, the compassion naturally blooms. It's a physical feeling in the heart center where that's a softening of the heart takes place. And I don't know about you all, but for me, I don't like that feeling. And yet, it's what I would equate with compassion, the development, the growth of compassion. I don't like this. So it feels it's a vulnerable place to be in. It's not some place I want to dwell at for very long. Lucky for us, Nirvana Sesshin is also an opportunity to really investigate that sense of loss that we may be experiencing, and to get intimate with it and to befriend it to a certain degree. I think this stuff ties in well with Uji, the time being that we've been checking out. And yesterday I mentioned the time of the horse and the sheep. And I want to read the full line here. Once again, it says, "What brings about the horse and the sheep presently lined up in the world is also the ascent and descent, the rise and fall. That is here's the important phrase, the suchness of, quote, abiding in their Dharma positions, unquote, abiding in their Dharma positions." So this is worth our contemplation. What does it mean to abide in our Dharma positions? This is a really profound phrase. And so how do we even get our minds grasping or wrapped around this phrase, each thing abiding in its Dharma position? Because this is a fundamental assumption of Zen Buddhism, that everything is holding its Dharma position. And that includes the zafus that we're sitting on, the ones that we're not sitting on. The zafu over here has its Dharma position. The wood floor has its Dharma position. It's ho, in Japanese, ho-i. The Buddha the statuary has a Dharma position. The walls have a Dharma position. The church next door to us, Augustana Lutheran, has its Dharma position. The trees out there have their Dharma position. The grasses have their Dharma position. And each of us abiding in our own Dharma position. We each take a Dharma position. I'm taking the Dharma position right now as a teacher, but it's a center, but it's not the only center. The Tenzo, the cook, has a Dharma position, and it's central. The person sitting Zazen has a Dharma position, and it's central. The incense has its Dharma position. The candle has its Dharma position. The eyeglasses, right? These have a Dharma position. It's a way of talking about how absolutely every being in the world is its own center. Everything is its own center. And the way that cosmologists talk about this is, I think, very much in parallel with this idea of Dharma position. That when they started to looking through the telescope, seeing that there's not just one galaxy, but trillions of them, and then looking at their projection, that they're all projecting from a singular point that we call the Big Bang. So if we go back in time, all of these galaxies that are out there right now in their various Dharma positions are returning to a singular point. And they say that each of these galaxies is the center of the universe. Each of these stars is the center of the universe. the earth is the center of the universe. We are also, each individually, each of us are the center of the universe. And this is a very different way of seeing the world compared to our Western view that saw at one point the earth itself as the center and everything revolving around it. And that got shifted to, with Copernicus, with seeing the sun as the center of the universe, with earth going around it, which got shifted again, seeing that the sun itself is part of a larger galaxy called the Milky Way, and it's revolving around the galaxy. But this view is saying something even more. It's saying that it's not just that there's one center, but there's multiple centers. That's the significance of holding your Dharma position, that it's basically saying that each of us, is the center of the universe, not in an egoic way, but in a way that's meant to help us to take with complete, I don't know if seriousness is the word, but, or maybe integrity, respect for our unique position in the world. Each thing has its own Dharma position. And Dogen also refers to time having its Dharma position, the horse's time, etc. There's another line in here a little bit further down that brings it back to this theme of nirvana. Using the 16-foot golden body, this is a reference to the Buddha, using the 16-foot golden body to manifest being the 16-foot golden body as bringing forth the mind, 1, practice, 2, bodhi, 3, and nirvana, 4. Right, so first of all, we're generally what we do when we're thinking about nirvana, we're thinking about enlightenment, we're thinking about Buddha. These are things, or Buddhahood, these are things that take place in linear time. We're here and enlightenment is over there, nirvana is over there. And Dogen is, from my understanding, encouraging us to not think of it in those ways, but to enter into Buddha activity. Right? So it's another way of saying enter fully into your Dharma position. Your Dharma position is Buddha activity, and that's why I want to see it. When we see ourselves as the center of the universe, again, not as in an egoic sense, but highlighting and making known for us the integrity of our actions, that our activity itself is Buddha activity. When we see it that way, even if we don't see it that way, but to see it that way changes how we do, how we work. Right? So whatever position you happen to be playing, whichever role you happen to be playing, that's your Buddha activity. So using the 16-foot golden body, that's kind of our measure. But then he says, enter into it, right? Be it. Manifest being the 16-foot golden body. And how do we do it? How do we manifest the 16-foot golden body? Well, he gives us 4, what are referred to here as the 4 stages of the bodhisattva practice. Raising the mind, right? Bringing forth the mind is reference to bodhicitta, the mind that desires enlightenment. That's number 1. We need to give rise to the bodhi mind. Like, yes, I am capable of full, complete enlightenment. This is, again, it's not an egoic statement. It's just a statement of that's our birthright. That's what the Buddha is calling us all to, right? So when we come to practice with that in mind, that's a different way of thinking than, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do this sesshin. Well, it's not about doing the sesshin. It's like, do you want to be Buddha, right? Yeah, you have that aspiration. That's what we want, is to have that aspiration to know that, to if we don't see ourselves there right now, then we generate the aspiration, I can do it. And that's where the self-confidence arises. We begin to have self-confidence in the practice. Now, this is so related to the nirvana of the Buddha too, because here, Ananda, we read in the Nirvana Sutra last evening, Ananda is weeping because the Buddha is dying, and he knows, all right, he's going to go. And the Buddha calls him to him. He says, yeah, Ananda, you got it all wrong. It's not me. It's not about me. It's about the Dharma, right? Be a lamp unto yourself. The Dharma is the Buddha, not me. And to add to that, for us, Thich Nhat Hanh, he says the Sangha is going to be the future Buddha. The Sangha, not a particular individual. We've seen so many amazing individuals in our lifetime and in previous generations that have cropped up here and there. Thich Nhat Hanh being one of them, the Dalai Lama, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and you can name others too. There are individuals that had just amazing abilities to do great things. But there is something to be said about the future Buddha being the Sangha, being the community, and taking refuge in the community as the Buddha, not in an individual. There's the strength, there's the power, is that we take refuge in the Sangha, right? All right. So he mentions these four things. So raising the Bodhi mind, Bodhi itself, right? Practice. So we can look at this in terms of stages. First is raising the Bodhi mind. Okay, I desire to do this. I desire to be my best self. That sounds so weak, though. That's just such secular language. Be your best self. Be all that you can be. Well, if we put it in that religious terminology, it just, I don't know. For me, it changes it a little bit. Be a Buddha, right? Be an enlightened being. Join the ranks of the Buddhas and the ancestors. Just join them. All right. There's a desire there. Number two is practice. If you desire that, well, then there's practice. That's number two. That's what we're doing. We're practicing. It's not just zazen. I mean, that's certainly it, but it's applying our attention to what we're doing. And then the third thing, Bodhi. So that's the awakening experience or experiences. And then the fourth thing is nirvana. The letting go of all of that too. That's got to be there as well. Dogen says, this is being, this is time. These four stages. This is being, this is time. So those four stages are all in their Dharma position. They all have a place. So nirvana, the death of the Buddha, has its place. But death in general has its place too. And I want to share a story. Again, coming back to this, the grief, the compassion that arises when we lose people that are close to us that have died. I want to share a story that my teacher shared with me early on. If you could even just take a moment now to think about when you first encountered death, maybe as a little kid. I remember the first death I remember was my grandfather dying, and I was maybe 13 or 14 years old, and that hit me really hard. That hit me. Oh, I didn't know that would happen, right? I just saw him, and then he went home, and he died a couple of days later. But here's a story that my teacher shared with me. I just thought it was so interesting when she shared it. It was very early on when I first met her. Somebody asked her about if we know when we're going to die. And because generally we don't know when we're going to die, and that creates this kind of mystery around death. But then she said, but sometimes people know when they're going to die. And she related this story of Dr. Suey, the medicine man that lived across the street from her in her town of Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. She lived on 3rd Street in St. Anthony, and across the street from that was the home of Dr. Thomas Suey. He was a medicine man and a member of the Huron native peoples. And she related that people came all over to visit him, and this was in the 1930s and 40s, and they would come in their cars, and license plates would read Canada, going from Canada all the way to central Pennsylvania to get medicine. And her father had an arrangement with this medicine man in exchange for the vegetables he grew in his garden, he would take care of the kids' medicinal needs. And so my teacher remembered feeling jealous that while her friends were getting white and pink pills to take for their colds, she was getting tinctures and herbal teas and concoctions that didn't taste very good. So one day, Dr. Suey was sitting on his porch, and my teacher, at that time she went by the name Patricia, was walking by the porch and saw Dr. Suey. Says, "Hi, Dr. Suey, how are you?" And he called her up to the porch and said, "I want to give you something." And he took his medicine bag off of his neck and gave it to her. She was maybe 5 or 6 or 7 at the time, and so she said, "Well, it's not my birthday. Why are you giving this to me?" Such an innocent question, right? And he says, "I'm going home tomorrow." And she said, "Oh, I didn't know you were going home." So she went off and took the medicine bag and went off and told her mother what he relayed to her, and her mother, Evelyn, said, "Well, I didn't know. It's not your birthday. Why did he give you that?" And she said, "He's going home." And Evelyn said, "Oh, I didn't know he was going home." Nobody said anything. So the next morning, they heard wailing from Dr. Suey's house. The wife had been wailing when she discovered her husband had passed. So evidently he knew what was going on. The present contains the future, and the future presses in on the present. Right? That's Uji. The present contains the future presses in on the present. Right? Our death is pressing in. And sometimes we're sensitive to that. But this idea, death is baked into existence from the very beginning. It's baked into our existence. Even the stars out there, they go through a birth and a death process, which is fascinating to think about. So this is kind of bringing it back to the idea of cosmogenesis. There's no reversing of that process. And yesterday I mentioned that the star that gave rise to our sun and the material of our solar system, right? That came from the heart of another sun, of another star. And then in the process of retraction and the gravitational pull, it reconfigures itself into you and me. No separation there. There's something hopeful about this, though, too, about this nirvana. And if we think about there's been 5 mass extinctions on the Earth since humanity. And presently, scientists are telling us we're in the midst of a 6th mass extinction because the species that have been here for millions of years, mammalians particularly, are going extinct at a rate even just as rapid as the 5th mass extinction with the dinosaurs. So right now, we're in the midst of a major nirvana, of the death of, the loss of life as we know it. And we see the instability, of course, globally with the mass migrations because of wars, because of resources and that kind of thing too. So we're in the midst of a great kind of a dying. And this often drives people to anxiety and depression. Like, what should we do? Well, this is also part of it, right? There's a whole myriad of possible responses, and each of us has our own Dharma position there. We each have to play our Dharma position, our Hoi. I can't give you one, there's not one solution to this. But what we can see, what we can observe, if we take the larger view, is that the sacrifice of life creates life. When life dies, we all benefit. We're alive because of the sacrifice of life, right? The sun is continually sacrificing itself right now at this moment. The hydrogen atoms are being burst into light at this moment. And of all of those hydrogen atoms in the center of the sun that are being burned up, light is going out in a million different directions from the sun. It's going out in a million different directions. And only a tiny percent of that light is actually reaching us. Is the other light just wasted? Is it just wasted light? I mean, that's kind of like our efficient way of thinking. What a waste. The sun's generating all this light and only a little tiny percent is getting to us. And yet that tiny little percent that's reaching us is stimulating life. It's the death of the hydrogen atoms that are creating light that's giving us life. And we're not totally clear on how this is all going to play out on Earth here for our future. But we have to keep that bigger view, I think, that from death, life proceeds. And we're at the end of an age. We're at the edge of, this is the most exciting time. This is the most exciting time for humanity to live in. What previous generation is witnessing what we're witnessing right now? We're on the very edge of an eon. We're on the very edge of, it's like the crest of a major wave, like what do you call this, tsunami. We're on the crest of a major wave. It hasn't broken yet. And we're just going to witness this through our very beginning. So in a one sense, we can also say that this is an exciting time in which there's a lot of grief. I don't want to downplay that either. There's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of anxiety. But if we keep in mind this bigger view, there's also, there's a lot of excitement and there's a lot of potential too. And that's where I think we need to continue to put our attention, not to deny the grief, not to not experience it, but to also experience the excitement of being alive at this time. So last thing I want to do is go back, if we have time. Yeah, got a little bit.
I think it's, when is Zazen? 11:20?
Tell you what, let's, I'll just, that may be a good place to end. There's
11:30.
11:30?
Yeah.
We got plenty of time.
Okay. All right. Well, let me There's one other passage here. It actually precedes what I've been just sharing with regards to these 4 stages, and that I think is very interesting. This is, by the way, Carl Biefeld did an amazing job translating the Shobo Genzo, and he's got profound, he left a profound amount of notations on these phrases so that we can understand them more clearly. So if you have any, if you're feeling hesitant to engage with Dogen, I think this translation is really, really helpful, because it really plays out, it really explains all of the obscure references here, and it points to where they come from. And he does a fantastic job of explaining. So I want to go into one of them here. So Dogen writes in English translation, "The views of the common people here and the conditions of those views, though they may be what the common people see, are not the Dharma of the common people. It is merely that the Dharma has temporarily conditioned the common people." Now, Kaz Tanahashi translation of the same verse is a little bit different. And to me, well, I like that translation. This is, I think, a little bit easier to understand. Although the views of an ordinary person and the causes and conditions of those views are what the ordinary person sees, they are not necessarily the ordinary person's truth. Do you guys get that? It's heavy philosophy. We got to really concentrate here. Although the views of an ordinary person, right? Think of somebody who's never met the Dharma or any kind of spirituality. The views of an ordinary person. What are the views of an ordinary person? It's referring to, I'm here and I'm separate from you. We're talking about deluded views. And even if you're a practicing Buddhist or in some other tradition, we have those deluded views too. Buddhism doesn't get us a ticket out of it. We don't get saved because we're Buddhists from delusion. We practice, right? So in any case, a common, ordinary person is referring to any one of us at the times when we see ourselves as separate from others, right? That the view of delusion, that what happens over there happens over there. It's not my problem, and not something I need to concern myself with, right? Although the views of an ordinary person and the causes and conditions of those views are what the ordinary person sees, right? Because there's all myriad causes and conditions that create delusion, stemming from, for example, the family views, the views of our immediate family. They water seeds of delusion, or of our larger society, the media. These are the causes and conditions for delusive views. That's why it says, they are not necessarily the ordinary person's truth. Right? So we need to distinguish between delusion and when we're experiencing the world through delusion versus when we're seeing the connections. That's the truth. When we're experiencing truth, right? Seeing how everything is interrelated, everything is connected. What happens out in the sun, in the star, in the center of the star affects me. Right? That's the truth. But we don't see that when we see, oh, there's the sun up there. Let me keep going. Right? The truth merely manifests itself for the time being as an ordinary person. Because you think your time or your being is not truth, you believe that the 16-foot golden body is not you. You guys get that one? Right? Because you think your time or your being is not truth. In other words, your Dharma position doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter, right? What does the Orioki teach us? Everything has its place, right? Everything matters. If you think that something that doesn't really matter, that's ordinary thinking. That's delusive thinking. Everything, everyone absolutely has its place. And then, but because you think your time or your being is not truth, you believe that the 16-foot golden body is not you. You believe you are not the Buddha. Right? And then there's this other sentence. However, your attempts to escape from being the 16-foot golden body are nothing but bits and pieces of the time being. Even our attempts to escape being Buddha are bits and pieces of time being. Those who have not yet confirmed this should look into it deeply. Those who have not yet confirmed this should look into it deeply. Now, this translation, the Bielefeld translation, has a slightly different, and it's very interesting. Because we learned that this time, this being is not the Dharma, because we learned that, we consider the 16-foot golden, in other words, because we're conditioned delusively, right, deluded thinking, we consider the 16-foot golden body as not myself. Trying to escape myself as not the 16-foot golden body. Don't you just love that symbolism, by the way? He doesn't say you're the Buddha, he says you're the 16-foot golden body. It's a wonderful way of thinking. And by the way, this 16-foot golden body is a reference to one blade of grass, is the 16-foot golden body. It's a reference to another sutra, but it's basically saying that in the small we find the big. Right, the Avatamsaka view that in one atom is the entire universe. It's also could be seen as a reference to that view. That we tend to, another way to look at this is the transcendent realm and the immanent. It's a good lens through which to understand religious symbolism. All right, we see God as transcendent, above as beyond, but you can also see God as immanent, as here and now. And we have the same lens through which immanent and transcendent is playing out right here. The 16-foot golden body is referring to the transcendent realm, right? The realm of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, way beyond our comprehension. But then there's the immanent contained in there too, the one leaf of grass, the one blade of grass. So, right, this is the Buddha, right? This notebook is Buddha, this cushion, this finger. You remember Gute's finger? Be careful of using this metaphor, you might get your finger chopped off. But in a mote of dust we find the entire universe. That's what we're getting at. When Dogen is using this phrase, that's one way we can take it. The 16-foot golden body is seeing the entire universe in a speck of dust. So whatever it is that you're doing, your breath, right? The entire universe is there. You're chopping the onion. There's the entire cosmos right there. You're sitting down here. You're listening, right? Me speaking. The candle contains the entire universe. So let's go on though. Trying to escape myself as not the 16-foot golden body is also bits and pieces of sometimes. And then here's an important piece here that I completely missed. Kaz Tanahashi, in his translation, he says something like, you have to look deeply and to verify this for yourself. But here, Bielefeld translated as, it is, quote, looking, unquote, by, quote, those who haven't verified it, unquote. Looking, by those who haven't verified it. And this looking is actually a reference to a saying of Master Rinzai about the true person, right? So we're grappling with the truth, like there's the ordinary person, and then there's the truth of the ordinary person that doesn't always manifest, that the ordinary person doesn't grasp, right? But this is all referencing back to Zen Master Rinzai, who himself is referencing a Taoist text, the Zhuangzi. So I wanted to end with looking at that text of the Zhuangzi, because again, it has relevance for nirvana, for the nirvana of the Buddha. So this reference, that goes back to the Zhuangzi, a Chinese chapter 6. The true person of old did not know how to be pleased that they were alive, did not know how to hate death, were neither glad to come from nor reluctant to go in. They were content to leave as briskly as they came. They did not forget the source where they began, did not seek out the destination where they would end. They were pleased with the gift that they received, but forgot it as they gave it back. It is this that is called not allowing the thinking of the heart to damage the way, not using what is of human to do the work of heaven. Such a one we call the true person. Such people as that had unremembering hearts, calm faces, clear brows. That's a nice image, right? Mm-hmm. Unremembering hearts, calm faces, clear brows. This is an attitude with which to face our own death, right? Remembering the source, that we come in and go out, we're going to return to it, give it back when it comes. It's time to go. Okay, here you go. Here's my life back. Now, Master Rinzai, he remarks on this. He says, or he uses that phrase, true person, the true person. At a convocation in the Dharma Hall, Linji said, quote, in this lump of red meat, that's another image, a good image for the body, the physical, unanimated body. There's one true person of no rank, always going in and out of your faces. Whew. Always going in and out of your faces. Those who haven't verified it, look. Right? Those who haven't verified, if you haven't verified it, you've got to look. Notice this. Those going in, what's going in and out of your faces? It's another way of talking about going in and out of our faces, right? So this is the benefit of religious literature. We get this deep, rich symbolism that gives us a different way of thinking. Lump of red flesh, right? To see ourselves as a lump of red flesh, and we have this something animating ourselves, this life force, this chi, in and out, the in and out breath. He could have just said, appreciate your breathing. But he doesn't. He says that you got something animating this lump of red flesh. It's going in and out through your face. And the kanji for this is also very interesting. Where is it? Menmon. The face, it's literally the face gate. The face gate, menmon. Men is the face and mon means gate. That is such an interesting way to think. We would say in English, we talk about the nose, and we don't think of it as a gate. But when you think of gate, I think of something that you're entering, right? And the idea of a gate or a doorway, and to think of the face as a doorway. And that what animates us is going in and out through that doorway, right? So it's something to think about as we contemplate nirvana, as we contemplate our own life, as we try to appreciate what we're doing here. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dogen.